Good
Oh,
evening,
yeah.
everyone.
Whee!
Welcome to season 4,
Let me-
episode 6 of Inside the Rookery,
Sorry.
a special festive episode where we're talking about holiday gaming. Welcome to my fellow Rooks, writer and educator Andy Leask, concept artist and illustrator Mark Gibbons, producer, writer, and cartographer Andy Law, and writer and editor myself, Lindsay Law. Thank you, Mark. Your host for this evening as we talk about the games that make the holidays better or perhaps even bearable.
But yeah, bearable, I think, more than anything.
Or, depending on the game, worse.
Fair. As
Hashtag
always,
memories.
As always, welcome to our live viewers and those watching later on YouTube. Please like, share, subscribe, do all the things that people do. And thank you to our Discord community and our patrons who, as always, have pre-submitted questions. And for those in the chat, be like Seagoat and send in some comments and questions that we can bring up on the stream. Seagoat says, Rookery Publications, I am sitting here with my Christmas socks on in front of a cozy fire.
And nothing
Sounds
else, I'm
idyllic.
assuming.
Yeah.
Just the stuff.
That is a massive stocking behind Lindsay. Must be a big Christmas list to fill that stocking. No, I'm not even going to say that.
So I'll add a little thing there. You're right. I'm not going to say anything to that either because the mind boggles. Yeah, I'll add a little bit. I'll share on Discord one of the Christmas years that we had with the number of games that we got, and that stocking will not be large enough to even come close to the stupendous amount of happy gaming gifts that we got. It was a good year.
It's true. It was a good year.
It was a good year. Anyway.
So, welcome to the festive stream, everyone. Whoa. Mark, you're looking great there in your Santa hat. Andy, a nice classic Christmas jumper plus a rainbow tree. And Andy Leask has got what? Pixel art and
Guardians of the Galaxy. I've got my very own holiday special right here. So, yeah.
Have you had Kevin Bacon yet? Have you enjoyed Kevin Bacon this Christmas?
Yes, I have.
Yeah.
Everybody does.
Yes, sir.
So Benjamin just got home from the family Christmas barbecue in the snowy forest. That actually sounds like amazing. Now I need a beer to recover and decided to finally tune into one of your streams. You are very welcome.
Very welcome indeed. And indeed, if you stay to the end of the stream, we're going to have a little Christmassy gift as well that we'll be adding to the end for all our lovely patrons. Thank you so much for your support during the year.
Yes. Oil painting 71, sitting here in front of a roaring fire with a painted portrait of Uncle Alphonse on the wall. Hashtag save Alphonse. Is this a Santa or is it a Christmas gnome or is it a little Nixer? Could be any of them. Andy, just watch yourself on the Christmas lights.
It's fine. It's fine. I'm tethered to myself, so it's okay.
Right. So let us get into the questions.
Comments, I think, would be fair to say for some of these.
Yeah. So the first one, coincidentally, is from Seagoat. So Seagoat says, in the Seagoat household, there is always Scrabble for Christmas. Over the years, it has been the mainstay of all of our Christmas games. Do you have a singular game that always gets played at Christmas?
Yes, I'll go first.
Yeah. Go on then.
We have somewhat of a yearly event, which over COVID became maybe not quite as yearly as it should have been because we all got rather ill. But we played Talisman, that lovely game that started off with Games Workshop back in the day. We, as a family, Lindsay often tried to avoid it because of the enormous length that Talisman can often reach in terms of gameplay time. We played the FFG version, and the FFG version with every single expansion added on doesn't just take a few hours to play, it will take all day to play. And my kids, who were quite happy to play all day, would do everything in their power to try and not win the game. So there's me desperately trying to win, to finally bring this game to a bloody end, while they are staunchly going from place to place, getting harder and harder and harder, becoming Talisman mini-gods. And whenever I was going, like, right, I'm going for the middle, they'd be like, oh, really? Smack! Well, let's see you get to the middle now, eh? Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, oil painting follow-up question. Which is the best version of Talisman?
That's a tricky one to answer. I'm very fond of the second edition. That's the most common edition everyone knows from Games Workshop.
In the 90s, yeah.
Yeah, from the 90s.
Yeah.
The first edition was obviously a much smaller run, but the second edition is, for me, a favourite. But the FFG version and the one that was based on that later is, for me, a better game.
So Seagoat says, my granddad was quite a fantastic Scrabble player, as was my mum. I've learned new words for my games over the years. So my mum and dad both are really good Scrabble players, and they play together. So that really wasn't a Christmas game that we played. We love a quiz and we love a competition. So sometimes we would play like Trivial Pursuit and stuff like that. But on Boxing Day, we always had another family round for a Boxing Day meal. The same family every year. In the summer, we would go on holiday to their kind of cabin, and then Boxing Day, they would come to our house for Boxing Day meal. And afterwards, we would all play games, and they would be different games every year. But the game that we always played every year, and everyone played from, and I would have been like age 6 or 7 when we started this, up to sort of 14 or 15 when we stopped, was a game called Animal, Bird, Fish. So you start with the categories like animal, bird, fish, and then you add some, and both of the families were big like kayakers. So we would always add a river, we would add maybe a mountain range, we would add a country, a city, and then you would get a dictionary, which was always on hand because of my mum and dad's Scrabble. You would flick through it, you would pop a pen in, and you would pick a letter, and you had to get an animal, a bird, a fish, a country, a city, a river, a mountain range of that letter, and you would only get a point if nobody else got the same one as you. So if it was D, things like the Dnieper river became quite like a niche point. And so that was our game, and I absolutely loved it. I think my mum and dad probably liked it because I would spend like the whole, like genuinely, but a good few months before Christmas preparing for this game by increasing my general knowledge on like obscure cities, obscure rivers. And there was always like the river one, because they were really into kayaking and they were like in the Scottish Canoeing Association and like did a lot of work. There was always like the honor of the family was at stake for who could find the most obscure river and get the point for that one. And I would say, yeah, it was a lovely game. Like I was 6, their youngest daughter was 6 years older than me, so she was 12, my brother was 8, her big brother or sister was like 15 and 20, and then there was her mum and dad, my mum and dad, and it was an amazing game. And one of the key like features of that game, which is why I love things like Dixit, which you can just see there, is that it doesn't, adults and young people can equally play that game. So yeah, adults might have better general knowledge, but as a kid, like you're quite often quite into flags and countries and trivia, and so you can beat adults at their own game.
Oh man,
I loved it.
My dinosaur knowledge as a kid was second to none. It was amazing.
So you would get the opportunity, Mark, to put in the category dinosaur. So everyone got the chance to put in a category. So you'd pick a category that you knew really well. And then so dinosaurs would be in it. So like obviously P, that would be a pretty good one for a dinosaur. And it genuinely, I think that probably started my love of like gaming and thinking about gaming and having games that everyone can play and have emerging complexity, and you can take it as seriously as you like or as silly as you like. Like some people didn't even try Paris, like,
But sometimes tactically that's not bad because nobody goes for the obvious answer. So sometimes
exactly.
the obvious answer
ones, right? Yeah,
exactly.
Which is why kids can sometimes win.
Yeah.
Exactly. So genuinely, that was the joy, like absolute joy of that game that has brought me over the years. I cannot underestimate.
I was just having flashbacks there. Sorry, to your youngest daughter winning all the time at coup by just never lying, by never bluffing. And yeah, us just every time we're like, oh, she must be bluffing now, and never bluffing, and therefore winning every single game I ever played her.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, and then one year, because she'd got a little bit older, she then knew that we knew that, and she once she bluffed one lie, and she got us all.
Yeah.
Fiendish.
Fiendish.
Yeah, absolutely fiendish.
I can recall Christmases. I don't think it was my family. I think it was probably like a girlfriend's family at the time. And every year it was Pictionary, and I hated it because it was like a busman's holiday. I don't want to draw anything. I've been drawing all year. I draw really, really badly. I'll just deliberately draw shitty versions of things.
Pictionary was a
Andy,
favorite
Lise-
one in our
yeah.
Christmas house as well.
Yeah, and also-
Particularly favorite because the dagger stroke aeroplane stroke man that my dad always drew, because he desperately wished he could draw, but everyone else in the family could draw not just better than him, significantly better.
Oh,
And
that's
everything he drew sort of looked the same, and he was desperately trying, and it was
bad.
it was invariably hilarious. Man, aeroplane, cross, Jesus, it's Jesus. No,
Scissors.
Scissors.
Andy Leask, we used to play Pictionary at your party. Remember the party
Yeah,
flat?
I
We
do.
used to have a Hogmanay party at the party
Yeah.
flat. We would play Pictionary, but we'd also play Articulate. And I was
Articulate.
always ended up a couple of times on a team with your sister-in-law, and for some reason we're on exactly the same wavelength. And
Yeah.
and I would just say random things. Good morning. She'd be like, Baltimore, obviously. Like, and we would just like rattle off articulate after articulate to the point that we had to be split up at
Yeah.
one point, I think.
Yeah, in the same way that Susan and I weren't allowed to be in the same team
Yeah.
as well for the same, because just that telepathy thing. Yeah.
Mhm.
It wasn't just a flat for parties. It was a point in our lives where we were all adults, so we had enough money that we could enjoy ourselves, but yet we had quite a nice big 1-bedroom flat that was quite sort of central, had a very big living room, lots of space for parties and stuff. So it was ideal for hosting parties. No, we did also live there and eat there, and you know.
He
so.
says that it was a party flat. That's all I knew.
I mean, I was there the whole way through university, so yeah, a little bit, yeah. For us, like the big one nowadays for Christmas that we always play, and we talked a lot about this on our stream with James Wallace a couple of weeks ago, is Quirkle, because just there is that thing in the same way that if you're after Christmas dinner, if you know you want to watch a film or something, you don't want something really deep and intense. You want some silly popcorn, entertaining thing because your brain is tired digesting all that food that you've eaten. In the same way with board games, whenever I've tried, and particularly because it's also with the in-laws who are maybe not as extreme gamers as I am, trying to get them playing something complicated on Christmas Day just never quite works. So Quirkle it is always a kind of a useful one. And then I'll maybe try and get them to play a little bit of Azul for a round or two. And we're like, right, we'll go back to Quirkle, or a trivia-based game, which is always popular with them. So, and the other one I want to just mention is Andy and my kind of former Christmas Eve tradition. With what was it? What's the actual name of the game? Can you remember, Andy?
No.
It's SmackDown Showdown.
Showdown. Yeah,
it's both. It's WWF SmackDown Showdown, and it's like a wrestling branded game. It's not particularly big or clever. It basically has a rock paper scissors mechanic for like drawing cards and playing cards and things. But it is weirdly fun and weirdly well balanced. That's the thing that surprises us. Is it's actually quite well balanced. They've thought about the balance of the different superstars, and that was our Christmas Eve. I would come down on Christmas Eve while Susan was at the watch night service, help Andy set stuff up for Christmas Eve. We'd play a bit of SmackDown Showdown, and yeah, it was a good.
I'm almost ashamed to admit, but it's a pretty good game.
It's a good game. The mechanics are very set. We should look it up. Whoever's who designed the actual mechanics, good game designer. Yeah.
Let me just bring up a comment from Infinite Saxon as well. Used to always play Mahjong at Christmas. We did that for about 4 Christmases in a row as well when I was in my pre-teens, because my parents got themselves a really expensive Mahjong set. And they were super keen to play it, but none of their friends were super keen to play it. So inevitably it turned into the games what we did play with our parents. And I really loved Mahjong, as it turns out. Really good game. We had loads of fun playing it, building our Great Walls of China. Good times.
So Mark McCranahan says, I've had some success getting Betrayal at House on the Hill into the Christmas table as a sort of game version of the ghost story for Christmas tradition. Yeah, that's a good idea. Like we play Mysterium on Halloween, Andy Lee's, or we have pre-COVID, we used to do that quite a lot.
We will again next year. Like
we shall.
Now there's a cat-free room that I can come to.
A cat-free gaming room, yep.
Yeah.
Extreme gaming, playing board games while outside gaming.
On a mountain bike. Which is on fire.
Stellar Duck. Interesting. I moved abroad, so left most Christmas traditions behind. But this year, I'm trying to start a new one of playing Sherlock Holmes consulting detectives while getting increasingly drunk.
Oh, was that the Is that the one where it's almost like a choose your own adventure thing, and you move from
Yes.
sections to sections? Well, we love that. We played that, and everybody gets to do a bit of role playing. And I think I said we have a bowler hat that you pass around, and when you put the bowler hat on, you read the bit and you assume a voice, which is always funny to do because you're trying to do East End Cockney urchin, and then you give it to a girl from Ukraine and say, "Go on, give us your best Cockney accent." It's amazing.
Benjamin, but to be honest, gaming at Christmas seems not to be a thing in Switzerland. Yeah, interesting.
Oh,
interesting.
A lot of the families that I knew when I was growing up, gaming was like those kind of parlor games. It makes me sound like I grew up in the Victorian era. I did. Like parlor games though, and stuff like that. But I had a friend whose dad had a group of friends who would come round to do Christmas gaming, and all their games were like Latin puns and stuff. Like their games were another level of insane niche nerdery. They were amazing.
I remember playing Monopoly quite regularly, and I think it got to the point where we started to create our own rules for it. So we had a hitman rule, whereas if your playing piece caught up with another's, you could roll a dice, and I can't remember what the number was, but if you successfully nobbled your opponent, they only got to roll one dice for movement going forward because you'd kneecap them.
So for me, Monopoly is a summer game because the family that I mentioned at the cabin that we would go to, the cottage, there was no TV, there was no phone line, there was no radio, there was a record player, there was about 10 packs of cards, there was Monopoly. And so the kids, in the evening, the parents would go to the pub and the kids would stay at home and play Monopoly. So for me, Monopoly is like a proper summer game.
For me, Monopoly is a crime against humanity.
For me, Monopoly is both a crime against humanity and a winter Christmassy stroke game. We would play it every year, and my dad would invariably always win. It's not that he was ruthless. He was just, let's just say he was a very good salesman. At
where you get it from.
Convincing you to sell your properties and sell partners at a bargain.
And he was very good at getting his own way, bless his soul. And my dad always won.
I think there's an opportunity we should contact. Is it Waddingtons who own Monopoly for like a craze? Because they're always doing special editions. Why don't we do a craze edition that we lean into that East End gangster special rules and see if this. Should I be sharing this on the stream?
Mark,
I don't know.
You're a genius.
Copyright us. Copyright us.
So I just want to jump in here. It's a shame James Wallace isn't with us because I'm sure James would have, given his book, we should put that up. Do a little bit of a plug for James Wallace's greatest board games book. But Oil Painting says, this is great. Hey, recommended games to play with a 6 and 9-year-old. I think the reason that James Wallace jumped to mind because his game, Andy Law, you'll remember Once Upon a Time. Once Upon a Time. Is a good game that doesn't require literacy.
You drop down some cards. It gives you some prompts to tell a story, and you tell a story with your kids, and it's loads of fun, and it really engages their imagination. We
used to play that when our daughters were much younger, so before we moved here. So they would have been exactly about 6 and 8 at the time, almost 9. A really good game. I really like Dixit for playing with young kids. Again, much like the game I was talking about, the Animal Bird Fish game. If you're playing with multiple kids, because of the way Dixit works, you can cater your clues so the kids can get quite wise to that. And our kids would use like cultural references that like we would genuinely have no idea about, but 1 or 2 of them in the group would, and you can get quite a lot of points. And when adults do that, you're a bit like, come on, like guys, like Andy and Susan, please don't just like use all the references from around your house. But when kids do it, like I feel like not me and Andy. We're although to be fair, like how many times Andy Leask have I pointedly address my clues to
That's
you.
fair.
Like,
To be honest,
specifically.
you and I are more of a menace with
Yeah,
that.
We are
So, yeah,
a
that's
menace for that. But when kids do it, that's the way the
Yeah.
kids can level the playing field in Dixit. And I love that
yeah.
about games like Dixit.
I've used Dixit in the classroom. It's sometimes an end of term game to kind of play with the kids, and it's that learning curve. They start playing, they don't really know what's going on. Then at some point something clicks and they understand, and suddenly I lose because they immediately start doing references that only they as teenagers get. That are totally out of my kind of ken.
Yeah.
It's great. It's great to see.
Oh, end of term. You talk about end of term games. That was for me more than even playing games at Christmas. The last day of term, you could bring in games, and my favorite then was Escape from Colditz. That was
Good old Escape from Colditz.
Oh my
Loved
god,
that game.
I loved it.
That was my child. I never owned it as well, so I
neither did I. Neither
only
did I.
got to play it
And I've
on
been
those-
so tempted when they re-released it that I must buy a copy,
Yeah.
even if I never play it, just to have it.
I think we might have it here.
At end of term in Scotland, we would always go. So at Easter, we would go to the church for the Easter hymns, and at Christmas, we would go to the church for the Christmas service. And you would all have to like walk to the church, which was, you know, like half a mile away. But because I played the French horn, I was in like the little orchestra, so we would have to go early and like sit in a room in the church hall, and we would always play games, you know, like to keep so the teacher that was with us, and we would always play that game like heads down, thumbs up, like those end of term games. I loved those games.
Just an excuse. Like when you think, I will say, you think about games like heads down,
Yeah.
thumbs up very differently once you become a teacher. You realize that is a game that was invented by a teacher to make their class be quiet. That's what that
Yeah.
is. Because
So-
you put your heads down,
Yeah.
basically, it's effectively having a nap. That's what the
Um,
class
so-
are doing. So.
So on Christmas Eve, when Andy and Andy were playing SmackDown Showdown, I was upstairs having a sleepover with our two, Andy Law and I's two girls. So that's our Christmas tradition, is to have a sleepover, and we always play on our sleepover the who can stay quiet the longest game, which is literally just to get them to go to sleep. And our children, it will surprise you all to learn, I am sure, are incredibly competitive.
Oh boy, are
So
they?
they really want to win that game.
Just to set the record straight, I've checked. It's Superstar Showdown. WWE
Superstar
Superstar
Showdown.
Showdown.
There you go.
Yeah. I would say another good game for kids that age is actually King of Tokyo.
Yeah.
Because the core rules are actually quite straightforward. They love the idea of rolling dice. They get the habit of that. And I started teaching my niece how to play that when she was about 4 or 5 years old. And she she didn't really know tactically what she was doing, but she understood the basic concept. And within a couple of years, she loved it. And I got her it for Christmas one year because I knew that she'd really enjoy it. So
I'll add to that and say one of the great joys of games like King of Tokyo as well is it's quite tactile for the kids because you've got the dice rolling and they're really clunky and satisfying.
Yeah,
but
big.
you also have that little disc that you can turn around. The very simple you're in or you're out mechanic works really well. And it's a game that really appeals to adults too. So you can easily turn it into something that everyone's going to enjoy.
And it lets them let that bloodthirsty streak out as well.
Oh, yeah.
I want to bring up this comment because I think this is really poignant and really actually strikes at the heart of gaming and why we game, to spend time with people. And Kervin says, my main Christmas gaming memory is starting to run a game for my immediate family to try and cheer us up on the first Christmas after my mum passed away. But the follow-up is, I don't think my dad had ever role-played before, but this game still continues when we go to see him every few months.
Oh, that's lovely.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
good.
beautiful.
Well done, Kervin. That's good.
Yeah.
Once when my grandparents were over for, I think it was Christmas, but let's be honest, I was so young it could have been almost any time. But they popped over, and it was just my because my granddad had recently died, and we role played. We played Advanced Fighting Fantasy. In fact, no, that's a lie. We played Fighting Fantasy because it was the original Fighting Fantasy one. It's before Advanced Fighting Fantasy was a thing, and it became an abiding memory for all of us because my gran, I think I mentioned this before in one of the streams, she played a character that she called D'Artagnan because inevitably that's what she knew. My dad played a character called Zombie the Great that rolled with such ridiculously low intelligence that all he could do was shout, "Zombie! Zombie! Rah rah rah! Rah rah rah!" And
Wow.
that was the ultimate expression of that character's roleplay experience. Zombie! Zombie! My mum being my mum wasn't happy enough showing the pictures that were inside the book to try and explain the atmosphere that you were encountering. So instead, she redrew them all and then pulled them up. Oh, pardon me, I bashed my mic there. Pulled them up in front of everyone so that we were all like,
wow.
And in many respects, that's what grounded my deep, abiding love of role play into me, because it wasn't just the event that was occurring. It wasn't just my dad, Zombie the Great. It wasn't just the art being revealed, pardon me. It was creating really memorable moments with people that we all loved.
Wow.
And to this day, years, decades later, I look back in that with fondness, and it involves my grandmother, who was the most traditional and grounded Englishwoman you ever met. But there she is in a game with Zombie the Great, playing D'Artagnan and swashing her buckle.
Oh, is that your grandma on your dad's side?
Yeah, on my dad's side.
I didn't realize. Right. Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah, quite.
So John says we have a game that the kids insist on playing every Yuletide. It's called the Christmas Eve board game, and I find myself losing my Christmas spirit the longer it goes on.
Wow.
Oh yeah, good one. We used to play this one quite a lot as kids as well.
Yeah, which one? I feel like I should know it, but I can't think in my mind what it is.
It's I'll find it for you later.
Is it like a flippy one, or is it like a
no? Well, not quite. No, I suppose it is, because you've got your hidden pieces and you move them forward, and then they challenge each other, and you flip them over, assuming they've got
like it's yeah.
We used to play that a lot as kids, because one of my friends growing up, Mike, who was American, had brought over his copy from America, and he absolutely adored it, so I had to play it because I was his best mate. And as it turned out, I absolutely adored it too, and he stopped adoring it because I won maybe 20 games in a row.
Oh, yeah.
And he was like, no, I hate this game now, and we're never playing it again. Screw this game. Yeah, go figure. Good times.
I don't think I've ever played it.
Yeah, it's a good game.
I don't know.
I'm going to make sure that I've got the right game now. Wait a minute.
It's going round to other family friend houses for a Christmas sleepover, typically Boxing Day or after. I did get to play other games which I didn't own. And John Lane says I have to get Stratego into our collection. We had so much fun with it during my school lunchtimes. Oh, Oil Painting says my kids also really enjoy playing Chaosium's Can of Cans.
Can of Cans is a great game. I backed that purely because of Mike Mason over at Chaosium. He posted it and said, everyone should buy this because, I work there, buy it. And I was like, oh, okay, since you say so, Mike, I'll pick it up. Yeah, and it's a lot of fun. Good fun wee game. Really cartoony, and it was a nice way to introduce people into the whole RuneQuest setup in a family-friendly way with ridiculously kid-friendly art. Yeah, good game.
Nice. I think another good game that would, for slightly older kids, would be Ticket to Ride, and maybe the Scandinavian one, because it's all like the trains are all like covered in snow and it's really Christmassy. I think that would be quite a nice one to play. Again, don't need a high literacy.
Somebody needs to do a gritter version of Ticket to Ride.
a Scottish gritter version.
Have you seen the Scottish gritters? Have you seen the names of the ridiculous names of Scottish gritters? Oh, they're lovely.
That needs to be a thing.
Yeah. If you don't know already, Scottish.
I know. I don't know what it is.
Yeah,
you know what it is?
Write these down.
It's the Christmas crackling.
It's the Christmas. In fact, I need more Christmas booze. I'm straight out of that, Daniel.
Cheers to sea goats.
Yeah, indeed. Let's try bring that. Cheers. Saint-Javard.
Yeah, I can't tell you. I'm just going to take a moment to say how delightful it is, as someone who is gluten intolerant, to discover that now one can quite readily get gluten-free IPA. So that's a Christmas miracle for me.
And I would have also reinforced Seagoat's comment there about the Scottish gritter names being fantastic. They are. If you don't know about them, I'm not going to spoil it for you, but you should go check up Scottish gritters, because you can track every single gritter. That's the big, huge lorries, I suppose, that set grit, which is salt out to stop all the snow on the roads. And they go all over the country, and you can track them all, and they have the best names ever. So yeah,
I have a favorite. I'm always watching.
What's your favorite?
Watching Spready Van Halen.
Spready Van Halen.
I'm not sure if there is, but he should be twinned with Spread Zeppelin.
Ah, there you go.
Nice.
Yeah. I don't think there is a
I'm
spread
about to
cyclone, although I haven't seen him yet.
I think there is. I think there is.
Is there?
sounds-
Okay.
Sounds just a little bit rude.
There's a spreading Mercury as well. If we're gonna, if we're
It's
gonna keep going.
Sled Zeppelin.
Sled
Sled Zeppelin.
Oh, that's even better. That's even
There
better.
is a link in the chat. It's not a very attractive link, but that will take you to the interactive map that lets you track them around Scotland.
Oh yeah.
Well, so
Recommend it. And I'm glad you made it in time, Martin.
Indeed. Right. Let's get into another. Seagoat asks, I've always wanted to try and run a planes, trains, and automobiles type scenario as a one-off game at Christmas. Have you ever taken a Christmas movie and remade it into an RPG session?
I would like to say before we go on, Planes, Trains,
yeah.
and Automobiles is a Thanksgiving movie, not a Christmas movie.
indeed, indeed. But it would make for an excellent RPG.
Yeah, well, I
scenario.
think most people, certainly as a Brit, when I first saw that movie, I assumed it was Christmas because we don't really understand Thanksgiving, or we certainly don't understand the significance of the coming together of the families for that holiday, and that's partly because it is more of that families gather around the table and stuff, because that's what sort of Thanksgiving represents. In it, if you lead aside all the genocide and all that kind of stuff. Plus, it's the only 2-day holiday Americans get. It's the last Thursday and Friday in November, so it's a 4-day weekend, and it's the only one you get in America if you're for the regular holidays. Of course, more progressive times now, employers will shut down for Christmas week, but back in the 80s when that movie was made, no, you got Christmas Day off, and that was your lot unless you took time off. So Thanksgiving was the bigger holiday for families coming together, which is why Planes, Trains, and Automobiles is so significant.
So is the Muppet Christmas Carol like actual live footage from the 80s in America? Is that what I'm hearing?
And it's LA in the 80s. That's exactly
It's
what
LA
it is.
in the 80s.
Yeah, it's Michael Caine and a load of Muppets.
Yeah. As an English teacher, I will say the Muppet Christmas Carol is a more faithful adaptation of A Christmas Carol than any of the other adaptations of A Christmas Carol. It literally uses words from the book rather than feeling the need to change them. The song that they sing when they're introducing Scrooge is the descriptions in Dickens's novel of what Scrooge is like. So,
let me just say hi to Creative Fossey. Glad you made it, and I fully understand sickness hitting the house. We weren't even here last week.
In terms of this, I mean, the most obvious one is Die Hard, right? Like
that was
that's a Christmas movie
as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like
I've played the Die Hard game as well, the board game.
Ooh.
I didn't even know there was one.
Yeah, it was a Kickstarter a couple of years back, and it was fun. It was fun because you got to sort of pervert the narrative and do strange things, but it was a little bit on rails. There was 3 sort of distinct sections that echoed the sections of the movie. So it felt like you were a little bit hampered by it, but you get to be John McClane, I mean, and playing it at Christmas would be the time to play it. Christmas Eve, obviously, that would be absolutely the time to play it. It'd be amazing.
I have seen the Die Hard advent calendars. That which is just Hans Gruber falling.
That's amazing. Yeah, closer
every
to the
day.
ground every day. It's awesome.
Right, so I'm going to take I'll go.
Oh, it's really not about games. It's about Die Hard. So, but I'm going to say it anyway, because I was about to. So the composer really wanted to have like a much more modern piece of music rather than Beethoven's Ninth Symphony for Hans Gruber falling off the tower. But I think we can all agree that it wouldn't be the same without Ode to Joy playing as he fell.
Absolutely. Do you know who was originally in line to play John McClane? This is a nice bit of movie trivia.
I do not.
It's Frank Sinatra.
No.
So because it's adapted from a novel, and he was attached very early days. So he had contractually first right to do it. He obviously was never going to actually do it, but they contractually
because
they had to offer it to him.
70 at that point.
They had to offer it to him so he could say no.
But
so that they could then cast
apparently the sort of the reaction to Bruce Willis being cast as an action hero was Hollywood regarded that as a laughable casting decision because it's the guy from
Moonlighting, yeah,
in a vest. What?
Yeah.
And then of course,
which was sort of
the genre, really.
And sort of the point of the original one is that he's a normal guy.
Yeah.
But by the end, he becomes a Terminator. But in the first film, he's like a normal guy. So yeah.
Oh right, yeah.
Right. So I'm going to attempt to answer the question.
Oh, what was the question?
I know, controversial, I know, but I'm going to attempt to answer the question. So, have I ever adapted any Christmas movies to my roleplay games? The answer is absolutely, sorta. In that I like to adapt, and I do really heavily use the word adapt, any type of media to my roleplay games. If there's a good idea out there, I'm quite happy to read it. And there are multiple examples of movies that could be argued are Christmas movies that I've looked at, taken ideas, taken some of the core characters and said, how can I rejig that, reuse it, and represent it in a different way into my games. Sometimes that's done lightly, sometimes that's done more heavily. The only time I do it more heavily is if I was doing a themed one-off, or if I was doing something specifically themed to the festive event, because then you want something that everybody can latch onto and say, oh, that's just that, isn't it? Oh, that's funny. Oh, I do appreciate that. Let's run with that and see where it goes. But when you do that, you almost certainly want to subvert expectations. So when people come into their, say, Die Hard movie, you can flip it around a bit and maybe have Hans Gruber as a good guy, or the equivalent inside it, and the PCs who are trying to gun him down because they all want to be John McClane end up killing a good guy and then find out that he's a good guy and go, oops.
Far better twist would be to force your PCs into being Hans Gruber and his mercenaries.
Yes, the murder hobos. Yes, absolutely.
I mean, inevitably that's what happens, isn't it? With good old PCs, murder hobering. Yeah, totally.
But actually force them to take hostages, like that's not a thing I think have we ever done that, Lindsay? In our roleplay games, have we ever accidentally taken hostages? I don't think we have.
I mean, you have frequently been bad guys by mistake.
Yeah, but specifically keeping people hostage in a building while we do something, I don't think we've ever done that.
Oh, you know what?
There's a goal.
Maybe Gruber is the NPC, and you unwittingly have been convinced by him that you are actually freedom fighters.
Yes.
And you don't realize he's just there to rip off the bonds.
We've used that sort of idea. We used that sort of idea in a couple of cultist style games for Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay, for example. I think when B and I were building up, what was it called? Heart of Glass, I think the adventure was. The idea of that was to show how easy it was to fall to chaos. Right. In that particular Warhammer one. And one of the first initial parts is they effectively get involved with a cult and get caught up with a cult and do things that are super cult based, and suddenly realize after the fact that they've become cultists. And that sort of idea really does work really well for helping people ground themselves in whatever your setting is and help to understand why bad guys can become bad guys.
Yeah, Hans Gruber, I totally hard agree. I was literally just thinking when you were talking about hostages, Andy, it's like maybe in a cyberpunk game, and then I saw this comment, and I'm like, 100% Hans Gruber, Kate Craig Oxbow says, is just a typical cyberpunk PC having a bad day. Yeah, absolutely. She just made a few bad life decisions on that day. But...
and you can see the frustration bleeding through.
So Creative Fossey asks, creating an adventure based on Christmas movies, etc. How difficult is it not to railroad it? I mean, creating straight from your imagination will be more open to sandbox than creating from anything that's already created. You may be more limited. Do you think you are?
Yes, and I'll call that out with a yes, where normally I'd say no, primarily because a lot of people, when they design their scenarios or their adventures around something else, feel that they want to nail a similar plot end. And I think that's the mistake. What you use is you are inspired, by the piece of media at hand, and you use that to create your own stories and your own end, and ultimately leave it so that the PCs can create their own end with the scenario that you create. So I would say yes, because a lot of people do this, but the answer should be no, because it's meant to be inspiring, not limiting.
Your jumping off point. It's where you begin, but then, But that comes back to something we've talked about this before, Andy, haven't we? That often when people are writing RPG scenarios or adventures or designing encounters for the party, they forget and think like a novelist rather than thinking like it's a different thing. You're not doing a narrative from A to B. You're setting up A, and then there's B, C, D, E, F, G, and so on for all the different kind of routes.
As John says, I think if you take the situation rather than the plot of a movie, the problem of railroading is lessened.
Yeah.
And in fact, I'll call out what Andy's saying there specifically because it's spot on. And that's that an awful lot of RPG writers think of themselves like novelists, and they've got a story that they want to tell, forgetting that they're not there to tell a story. They're there to provide all the tools for a GM or your storyteller or your DM to tell their story. So what you're there to do is to provide and inspire someone else to create the most stunning sessions.
I think Seagoat's example, Planes, Trains, and Automobiles, would actually give you the format for creating an original adventure. In that, it's just the endless hurdles that your character has to overcome to get from was it New York to Chicago? I think
Chicago,
is where he's trying to get to.
So it would be
so,
coaches, barges, and I don't know.
Well, you just how it all goes horribly wrong. You can interject a whole bunch of other. And again, the character that you're, if assuming you're playing Steve Martin's character, well, the John Candy is kind of your sidekick, but also your antagonist. And you know what I mean. You got that. I think the Planes, Trains, and Automobiles model gives you lots of opportunity to do some really interesting little twists on it. I think
absolutely. And of course, Christmas Carol that we talked about before, like actually would be quite easily adaptable. And I think like it's probably the kind of thing that people have lifted the motif of some kind of supernatural entity or spirit coming to you, taking you on some kind of spiritual journey to teach you a moral lesson. That's appeared in like loads of RPGs, probably not consciously riffing on Christmas Carol, but you know, it is a.
Well, they keep remaking Scrooged or a variation of A Christmas Carol every year. There's a new one this year, isn't there? Yeah. There's another Scrooged out. So
the Ryan Reynolds one.
Yeah.
Infinite Saxon asks, have you ever done anything Christmas themed in Rough set around Monstill, or have you depicted certain in-game festive traditions of a festive date within the setting? I don't think so, but I thought I would take that opportunity to say no. But in the Rookery, we do have Mother Hoarfrost, our festive offering.
Nice pitch. Excellent.
Nice pitch. Let me just say that if you haven't already bought Mother Hoarfrost, it's an absolute joy, and we'll very soon have a whole host of music files attached to it. They're just getting finished off just now. The post-production part of the musicy bits are happening as we speak. And they have been beautifully sung by this professional singer, what we did meet, our daughter, and they've come out really, really well. So not only do you get yourself a lovely Christmas creature, well, a festive creature, shall we say, that you can bring into your fantasy RPGs or other RPGs should you wish. You also get yourself a whole host of story hooks that ensure that you can use that creature in a variety of different ways, and of course some awesome festive musicy bits. The music's already up there.
Yeah. Would you like a little preview of the festive music bit from
go on.
Mother Hoarfrost?
Do you have it?
Give me a moment.
Another drink while you're doing that.
I didn't.
'Twas in cold winter when Mother Hoarfrost spilt natal ice upon him, that she claimed his soul. Cold flesh clutched about him, snow on limb, limb on snow. 'Twas a cruel midwinter, a long, long time ago.
That's really haunting, isn't it? I love it.
It is haunting, yeah.
I feel super festive now.
Well, you know, much like I would argue objectively the best Christmas, I don't want to say Christmas song, but certainly Christmas carol, like hymn style, is In the Bleak Midwinter, and that's not exactly cheery. So, you know, there's a...
That's not my favourite one, but let's not get into that.
Well, it's got the best lyrics. Like, it's proper poetry.
Yeah.
It's Christina Rossetti.
Yeah. John Lane, there is a Wifrip scenario set at Monstill released by C7, if I recall. I did have quite a spoilt noble character who sort of accidentally invented the Christmas tradition of giving gifts.
So I'm going to also answer the question and say that yes, I've done this repeatedly. In that whenever I have a setting that has got various events that occur at certain seasonal points, I will ensure that those seasonal events happen in game because it's fun. Whether that is a Halloween equivalent or a Christmas equivalent or just a birthday equivalent, grounding the setting in those annual events really does make it feel more real. And it also is a stress release in a longer campaign where you may have dungeon delving or demon killing or whatever else that you happen to be doing. You can then turn to a far more social environment where there's music and there's laughter and there's some sort of subplots running through it in a classic, I don't know, rough nights, hard days, multiple adventure plots running in the background type way, which we're of course doing with Ship of Fools coming out very soon. Just to do another plug, we appear to be plug-tastic today.
Left, right, and centre.
Oh, it's working well, but something like Ship of Fools works very well for that as well, where it provides a host of plots that you can add to an existing journey in the same way that a host of plots can be added to an existing event that you might be playing through. And I heartily recommend diving deep into that, whatever your setting may be, because it's just fun.
Seagoat says, "What? No one has listened to the best Christmas song yet. God rest ye merry gentlemen." Do you know
By
that
Dio?
it's not?
I'm not familiar that Dio, Ronnie James.
Me neither.
Ye merry gentlemen.
So did you know that it's not the gentlemen that are merry? So it's not God rest ye merry gentlemen. It's the state of being you want them to be. It's God rest ye merry gentlemen.
Ah! I did not know that.
Yeah. It's basically saying like,
so you're
peace and
pre-merry. You're pre-merry at that point. You've yet to achieve the status of merry.
Yes.
So God rest ye merry. So when you rest, be merry at that point.
Be merry.
I like that.
And rest isn't actually rest. It's God keep you like safe. God keep you safe, gentlemen.
Oh, okay.
Oh my goodness. Then my whole appreciation of that song has been turned upside down.
Or if merry is merry in the more modern sense, then it's keep your buzz on is essentially what that song is saying.
Yeah.
God rest ye merry, gentlemen. Keep your buzz on, gentlemen.
On that,
Can we
equally valid?
Can we call up Stellar Duck's
Yes.
comment? I'll bring it up if that's okay.
Oh, find it for me. Yeah.
Just he mentioned this novel, The Devil in the Dark Water, and it's uncanny because I had exactly the same thought when I read it. It's a terrific book. If you've not read it, I highly recommend it. It came out last year. It's essentially set, I think it's like 17th, 18th century, but it's a boat sort of traveling from the colonies in Australia back to Britain. And on it, you've got the former governor from there. You've got a guy who's like a detective who's been accused of murder, so is like imprisoned. You've got his former bodyguard who's traveling. You've got various, just really interesting. And then supernatural type stuff starts happening, and you're like, is it supernatural or is it murder or is it? And it's just, but it's great, but it's contained in that boat. But obviously, as they were, it's like a big sailing vessel, so it's essentially a floating town that's going, and it's a really, really good setting. And reading it, I was like, this is an ideal adventure. And I did literally think this is a way you could, if you wanted to tonally shift Ship of Fools, this would be quite a good thing. So I recommend if you're looking for some reading to inspire you, if you're planning to run Ship of Fools, I would check that out.
Something that appeals to my I would just like to pop up this part here because punctuation does matter for that. God rest ye turning into that.
Yeah.
Indeed. God rest ye merry gentlemen.
Of course, the reason I know that is because prior to growing up in the Victorian era, I was actually around. So my native language is actually like Middle English, really, strictly speaking. Let me see, what have we got? Oh no,
I'll share a review of that.
I deleted a comment.
Oh no!
Well done. I'm the one.
Out of all the streams we've done, we're on season 4. I have never accidentally deleted a banner instead of bringing it up, and it was a multi-parted banner.
No.
So basically, you're going to get part 2 and 3, and you won't know what part 1 was.
Oh,
this is part 2. This is part 2. Seagoat says, needless to say, game board, kitten, drinks, and everything else on the coffee table ended up on the floor.
Well, that's just
I'm now going to interrupt and say, I remember part 1. Part 1 said they got a new cat that jumped up onto the table.
So Seago asked, do you have any such gaming anecdotes from the festive season, presumably when something particularly catastrophic has happened?
Possibly involving a cat.
Yeah.
Other than playing Monopoly, which indeed is a catastrophic event for any festive period.
Inevitably.
I've got one. I've got one, Andy Law.
Go for it.
So it was just before, in the night before Christmas. It was actually about 5 or 6 nights before Christmas, and we were in a flat in Leith because this is why do I even need to tell this part of the story? Our flat had been flooded, and we were living in a different flat. And Andy had balanced his laptop on the corner of the sofa, and I stretched my foot out and kicked his laptop off by accident. And as a result, he lost an awful lot of work that was on that hard disk because it was completely irrecoverable. That's my Christmas catastrophe.
It was awful. That there was everything in there from all of my Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay 2 work that I had ever done. So every single map that I'd ever created or word I'd ever written was lost on there. That was a dark day. But
and you didn't have a backup.
No.
God.
It's because we were out of home and everything.
I know,
was
but I mean,
upside
still
down. And
laptop.
And it's not the first time you've lost all of your material through not having a backup, Andy, is it?
No, it's not.
That was
the second time. Was that the first one?
No. You definitely lost it before.
I'd lost previous before when we had the flood, and I'd lost, and then we came out of the house. And then I lost it all again not long after. And it was, if anything, the one that turned into the recurrent, dude, back up. Yeah. It's never happening again, ever. But
and it only took what, 6, 7 times?
Yeah, I'm going to say 12. I mean, am I ADHD? No, not at all.
I mean, possibly you didn't tell me about some of them because you knew what my reaction would be.
Yeah, I'm rightly so. But that's where of all that though, the part that I regret losing most, and there was a lot that was lost, including about 500,000 words worth of RPG material that I was working on. But the bit that I regret missing most was a board game that I created for Mass Effect for ourselves, and I had spent so much time researching it and making it match the entire board, computer game arc, and we had built it largely for us because it was fun, and it was actually really good. It was one of those rare bits where I felt that I'd made something good. And for those of you who don't know me, I am hyper-critical of everything, particularly anything that I make myself. If I've made it myself, it's going to get, if anything, far more disparaging comments from myself than anything else. And I liked it.
The thing I regretted losing on that laptop was a first draft of working title Officers and Overseers, which was the tale of a D&D party that, much like the D&D party that ended up in D&D world, they ended up in the real world in office jobs and were trying to get home, but like every week there was like a new target or a new deadline that had been given to them and they could never get home.
I love that.
Yeah. I'm feeling all sad again about the loss of that game, man.
Yeah, sorry.
No, I'm
shouldn't
not surprised.
Yeah,
you shouldn't have kicked it off the sofa, that's for sure. But he should have balanced it on the edge.
I should have balanced it, indeed. Yeah, I continue to be terrible.
I didn't do it on purpose, Mark.
I know. No, it's very much his fault, not yours.
Yeah. No, I very much didn't. Okay, so let's have a look at thanks, Seagoat. Seagoat would read Officers and Overseers. Yeah.
So say we all.
Yeah.
Oh, the different classes. Well, there was like a project manager, there was the PR person, there was the treasure, like the accountant,
HR,
there was HR, PR, like public relations.
No, but what's their
just
HR
had to
as well?
constantly like spin things. And they were all in kind of the wrong jobs. So like the dwarf who you would have thought should maybe be the accountant was actually like PR and on HR and was just having to deal with people all the time.
Love it. And hating it.
Yeah. Like,
so what typical sort of RPG archetypes would translate? What's the equivalent of your cleric? Is that HR, your cleric? I'm trying to think. Would that be usually? What's the rogue? Rogue is marketing. Rogue is always marketing.
Yeah, so actually, so
Or
the
marketing are
the
always
marketing-
rogues.
You
I
know,
think.
you're
marketing-
showing your personal preferences there, Mark.
the marketing / sort of PR person, Mark, who was having to constantly spin was a particular development of a rogue from one of our
Of
games,
course.
and it was just
Natural
perfect.
fit.
Like he was just amazing, and he was like so wearied, like it had really broken him down. He was a really like joie de vivre, and he just wasn't anymore. It was just like,
Yeah,
you guys, like
yeah,
we have to go
yeah.
home. But no, and we figured it was probably that part of the reason they couldn't go was they were like creating a game, so they were a software company, and it was just like
Oh,
constantly
perpetual
crunch time.
crunch. Yeah, yeah.
Perpetual crunch, yeah. So yeah.
Yeah,
One
sleeping
day
on
we'll rewrite it.
your desk. The management have locked the doors. You can't leave.
Yeah, and now in my
But
later
we're
years,
almost home.
yeah, now in my later
No.
years, we would probably take one of the bad guys from like like Venger would come in, and they might be like internal audit or something like that. So
Yeah, or the
little-
publisher. Usually the publisher. You're
yeah,
a feisty little indie developer, and the publisher is ultimately the big
Yeah.
bad guy.
Actually, from my own experience as in internal audit, I would put the paladin in internal audit because we are, of course, the true
It's
heroes.
interesting though. Seagoat said the same comment in Twitch as well. So two of our viewers simultaneously were like paladin in marketing. So
Paladin. Yeah.
that speaks to some paladin-based trauma in their history. I think.
I like the idea of a barbarian doing mindless data entry on a spreadsheet, suddenly getting angry and angry.
Yeah, I like that too.
I love it.
Anyway,
No, I'm
I
not
think there's
calling
a
this one out
typo-
just because of Lindsay. Okay, I'll put that away without saying anything because she is an auditor.
Yeah.
It depends if you think inquisitors are bad guys or not.
Ask Henry Cavill. I'm sure he's going to become one.
Oh, almost certainly.
No, Henry Cavill is going to play every single Primarch, but just with a different facial hair. Nice hair, have wings. Yeah.
That would be hilarious, actually, if that is what they did.
He's already shown he's a master of disguise in The Man from U.N.C.L.E. He can do it.
I thought you were going to say when they CGI'd the mustache.
Yeah, when they CGI'd his mustache.
That was not a master of disguise.
Really?
That was such an odd decision. No, we won't shave your mustache and put a fake one on because we've been doing that for 100 years. No, you keep your mustache and we'll CG it out. We'll give you a fake top lip because that's so much more straightforward.
No.
It's almost like Zack Snyder was blind to anything and thought CGI could fix all of his narrative problems.
Oh.
A little bit of salt.
Wow. So anyway, we don't have time for this last question, so we'll have to do it again later. Oh, do you have an anecdote?
No, I don't. I'm just going to say it is a burning question. Do you down gaming tools for dinner, much like the Queen's speech? Does everything stop for that? I don't know.
We tend not to start until after.
Yeah. Well, you've got to allow a couple of hours for the turkey to work its way through your system, and then you recharge yourself with an eggnog or your tipple of choice, and then you start the gaming.
Mm-hmm. On that note, we have reached
we're
the
not
end
done.
of our stream. I know we're not done. So I was about to hand over to you with 2 minutes to go to tell us about your exciting festive news, Andy. Well, that's what you get for being
exciting
so
festive news. My exciting festive news is that I have drunk half a bottle of Jack Daniels, so prepare for the spiel. Okay, so if you are a patron for our lovely show, then Mark has a little ditty that he's going to say that you're about to receive because we have a little preview that we're going to be sending out to all of our patrons, which is Mark.
I have no idea what you're going to say.
Mark, I'll say the appendix.
Oh, okay. You're going to point me at that. Yeah.
Yes.
Yes. So
you've been doing it, Mark.
I know. Progress is moving forward on the Ship of Fools, which, as most of you hopefully know, is our first big proper published hardback sexy book adventure. And as we're moving through it, and I'm finishing the art, we're finishing off sections, and I said, hey, we've got one of the appendices done, the one with all the alternative endings. It looks really cool. Should we give it away for Christmas? And everybody else said,
Yes!
that sounds like a great idea.
So let's
So
do that.
we're gonna do that.
Yep. So we'll be giving the PDF to our patrons.
Yes.
And for our
It's a wee short one, so don't
Yeah, it's
expect
very
too much.
short.
It's
I
like
think
four
pages.
I think 4 pages, but they're very
It's
pretty
super
pages.
sexy and super lovely, and that'll be quite fun. So we're going to send that over. And plus, it's worth saying that this is stuff that's not in any way material that you've seen before if you're ever part of one of our playtests. This is
No.
100% new. This was a material that was added because of our playtests. Suggestions that we received and spins on the suggestions that we received. On top of that, though, for all of our Brazen Rooks and above, we also have, now this is where I'm going to turn to Lindsay and say, can you bring it up? We're obviously at a position where Christmas gifts are a good fun thing to do. So we have printed out the coiled crown poster. Lindsay's got a big version of it. Is it over there? Is it out of reach?
No, it's not out of reach, but I want to get Mark's permission before I show something that is not in the format that it will be sent in.
No, that's fair.
No,
because,
please. Yeah. So this is a
because-
proof. This is a proof, if you will.
This is
Yes,
a
it is.
proof, and it is not the size that it will be sent at.
Yeah,
It's much bigger than the size we will be
Yeah,
sent
that's
Probably.
fair because we had a big discussion behind the scenes as to what size we were going to send this out, and we've decided that probably A2 is the best. Was it A2 that we decided on?
Well, that is
because-
about A2. That's A2. That's
So it might
easily
be
A2.
it might be A3 that we've gone for purely because it frames up really well, and we can get that posted off really easy. So this is going to be a sign up for everybody that's our Brazen Rook for hire. I'm going to put a post up the second this stream is finished, and all you need to say is I want it as a Brazen Rook, and we will send it to you. And that's
There you
it.
go.
And
And
also,
if you do that, you'll need to DM me your address so that I can make sure I send it off. I'll go do the prints on Monday, and then we'll send it straight to you because it's Christmas, and that's awesome.
and we also know we're a bit behind on our master classes, primarily because of the continual COVID and illness in
Yeah.
our household.
Man,
So
yeah.
we're just setting some dates to catch up with them. So we're not going to cancel them and do them. We are going to catch up and continue to do them. And I think the first one you may have seen in the intro is going to be me on the 28th of December. It's a Wednesday evening in between Christmas and New Year. And that is that. Have a very happy festive period. Join us for the masterclass if you're a patron, but also join us in the new year for the season 4 continuing of Inside the Rookery. We've already got a few guests lined up for the start of January, and we'll be sharing more details about them and about what's on for the end of January and into February shortly.
Yeah.
Yes,
There
and
you
on
go.
that note,
So I think we should finish off with God rest ye merry gentlemen
Gentlemen
and
and,
gentlewomen
and ladies
and anyone and anyone else.
everybody.
and everybody.
Just
Gentle
rest your,
folks.
just
Thank
rest
you
it
all.
merry.
You're the best.
Nadolig
Just rest
Llawen.
merry. And one thing remains for me to say: God rest ye merry corvids. Caw-caw, caw-caw. Good night.
Bye all.